All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Let the Journey Begin. I am your host, Jason Waller, alongside my co-host, Hilary. How are you, my friend?
I have now become a legend in my own mind.
We know that. After you get 24 years of sobriety last week, I figured that you could start, throwing those things out there. So
It's just,
yeah, it's good to have you back in twice. Twice, and
well, if you're lucky, you'll have more.
well, you did just move down here. So, how's the moving process going? All that stuff going well?
Intense. Moving's always stressful, but these, like some of the people we know say I have problems in areas where I didn't even used to have areas.
Yeah, no, that's how is this affecting? I think this is a great thing. The stress and the pressures and stuff. How is that impacting your recovery?
Well, if I do what has been taught to me from the beginning and I add in all the other things I've learned, I do fine. As you know, when I flew across the country last week from Florida to LA, and then I went out to celebrate, with my friends, and I was up almost 24 hours. That halt, that hungry, angry, lonely, tired, I was like out of my brain.
Yeah, it sounds like you weren't doing anything that you were taught. It seems like you're burnt out on all ends.
I took it to the limit. No, but when I get good sleep, I'm like a different human being having rest. But it was fun. It was great. I wanted to honor the DJs that had pushed my music the way they had and spread the word. And they were out for the first time. And I wanted to be there,
No, I totally agree. I think though it's a real thing though, is obviously after we get sober, remove the drugs and alcohol. There's a lot of those life events, even when they're great events, that can be very triggering. For me, moving and having a new kid, there's a lot of things that can come up. So it's being mindful about that. And I think what I hear you saying is taking it, literally taking a task at hand and doing what you have to do for the day is what getting you through.
And it's still, even though these are first world issues, the bottom line is it's still hard. Change for me at times can be hard. I get, settled and then the fear comes up and the stories that I make up in my mind. But the good news is I don't want to die over any of it. I don't want to drink. I don't want to do anything crazy. I just recognize it and try not to beat myself up for having the feelings over first world stuff and just move on and do the next little baby steps. Just like our guest last week said, baby steps.
100%. Well, boom. We'll have to follow up with that next week. Hopefully everything continues going smoothly, but we got a very special guest. Why don't you bring her on?
Man, our guest today has over a decade of recovery as a sex and love addict. My kind of girl. She is an actress, producer, and director, known for her roles in Jarhead, Prom Night, and American Virgin. She is also the host of the mental health podcast, Secret Life, in which her and her guests unpack a plethora of taboo topics. I really, really want to welcome this beautiful lady, Brianne Davis. Thank you for joining us.
Hey guys, how are you? Yay!
Good. How are you? Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh my God, I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here, honestly.
Of course. How's your day going? How's everything on your end?
Oh, good. As an addict, that addict mind wants to twist and turn, and you just have to stay serene and at peace and turn everything over. So that's what I do on a daily basis, 24/7.
That's what I'm talking about.
Well, we start our guests with a very intense question.
Ooh, okay.
Are you ready? What did you want to be when you grew up?
That's the thing. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I was growing up, but I know from a very early age that I didn't want to be me, which was a huge problem.
Ooh.
That's so
Can you talk
relatable.
about that? Talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, I knew I had a learning disability very, very young. I had ADHD, dyslexia. I've never felt like I completely fit in. And then I came from a family that was very dysfunctional. My parents, they fought constantly. So when I looked at relationships, there was drama, there was arguing over finances. I never saw a healthy relationship. I never saw them, say loving words to each other, hold hands, even sleep in the same bed. So from a very young age, I went into fantasy. I would just be in my room in fantasy, playing out characters and just never comfortable in my skin. And it seemed like I brought that into being an actor, which is like my therapist tells me is the worst career for my addiction. Completely horrible.
Right? No, so yeah. I think looking at that, that is, it's you were able to identify that it sounds like at a young age though. right? That you weren't wanting to be comfortable in you weren't comfortable in your own skin and you were trying to escape reality at a young age, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was a latchkey kid, so I got to watch film and television all the time. And I remember watching my favorite movie, Romeo and Juliet, at 6 years old, which no one should be watching that at 6 years old. But I remember seeing Michael White's butt at that young of an age and going, oh, that's a cute butt, like that thought. And then,
Right.
no, really, like how that even happened. And I, saw porn magazines just lying around sometimes. And and then the second thought that I had while watching Romeo and Juliet is that these two people loved each other so much that they were willing to have a secret, be away from their families. It was wrong. They slept together quickly, and then they were willing to die for each other. There was like, someone's going to take some poison and someone's going to stab somebody for it to mean true love. And now when I look at it, I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. If somebody said they, met for 2 days, their families hate each other, slept together, and then they're willing to die for each other. But I just was always trying to disappear outside of myself all the time. Like I would go into fantasy. And I think a lot of addicts do that. As we go into fantasy, we have trouble living in reality at reality's terms. And I just felt that from such an early age.
Wow.
That's so,
I can relate.
No,
Right?
it is. And I think a lot of people there's always a misconception though, when it comes to like love addiction or sex addiction and different things like that. And I think it would be an awesome opportunity for you to kind of delve into, some of your experiences that you went through and, to help our listeners understand, like, maybe if it's something that they've encountered, because I think there's there was a time in my life where I actually went through, maybe it was a sex addiction or whatever it may be, that I think, a lot of people don't even how do you even identify a sex addiction or a love addiction? How can we start there?
Yeah. Good idea.
Yeah. I love that question. So I like to break it down very simply. We are addicted to people, just like alcoholics are addicted to a bottle of alcohol, or meth addicts are addicted to meth. We are addicted to people. We want power and control over people. We want them to fill us, to give us the attention, the love. I say when you're like looking for your soulmate, you're like obsessed with falling in love. That falling in love high is like the best high in the world. And the way I like to explain it is the sex addict part is, one night stands, the constant DMing, swiping left, swiping right. Porn addiction is a really big one on this sex. Masturbation, when you don't want to feel your feelings, you go and act out that way. But it's mostly to the sexual act. It's not specifically the individual, but you seem to use the love aspect to get that sexual act. So you intrigue and you flirt. Then on the love addiction side, it's going after the unavailable person that never shows up for you, returning to bad relationships over and over again, thinking they're going to be different. It's really being obsessed with one specific person, and it's going from like multiple relationships, cheating, all that stuff. So it's usually a combination of both, but the main thing I say, it's having trouble connecting intimacy and your sexuality. Like for me, example, I could, it would be not fun for me to have sex with someone I love because it's too intimate. It's too much. I'm afraid of being abandoned. I'm afraid of not being loved, of my worthiness. Then it's easier for me to have sex with someone I don't really care about or I'm playing a role. But I do want to specify that I've never had a one night stand as a sex and love addict. I haven't had I haven't had a huge amount of partners. So you can be a sex and love addict and have just a couple sexual partners. It's when you use people and do these things to fill you, because underneath you are low self-esteem, fear of abandonment, fear of intimacy, fear of being loved, all that stuff. So I hope I explained it.
No,
you did.
Very, very well. So is there correct me if I'm wrong though, so it technically you don't even have to engage in the act of sex with for it to be diagnosed as somebody that struggles with love addiction or sex addiction. It's more of the underlying issues that come with it. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, you can be a sex and love addict and be living in fantasy constantly by intriguing with people out on the street or flirting, but then never following through that because you're afraid of that closeness. You could be at home masturbating, looking at porn and not be sexual with anyone. And then the other side of the disease that nobody talks about is sexual anorexia. When you shut that part of your body off because you don't want to get hurt. And usually we swing from one way to the other. We go, acting out, then to being anorexic.
Wait, so what is sexually anorexic? I've never even heard of that.
I know. I mean, that's the thing. That's why I'm speaking out about it. Sexual anorexia is when you're afraid of being in a relationship or being sexual with somebody because it's too intense, it's too intimate. So you shut that part of you down. So I know a lot of people that haven't had sex with someone for a couple years or 10 years or stopped dating because they hate the dating situation. So they just shut that part of them down. But as humans, we need to connect to one another. We need to connect our sexuality to intimacy. And right now, society is really putting it where it's like using your sexuality, get what you want, all the filters, all the DMs, all the fantasy and all that. And like the high of falling in love instead of what real intimacy looks like between two people or multiple people, whatever floats your boat, but what a healthy relationship looks like.
So it's that false sense of reality that everybody is prone to, and they just kind of living in a fantasy land.
Remember when I talked about my story and being in sobriety, but having to work that out? Like I wouldn't date for 2 years at a time. And it wasn't because I was trying to get to know me. I was just like, I was terrified.
Yeah. No, this is all so fascinating to me. But going back to your story real quick, so what I heard, from you as a young child, though, there was a lot of emptiness, right? There was not a lot of direction, correct? And so how much does that tie into, with sex addiction and love addiction?
I mean, I think it all stems from our parents and our background. When I looked and did my family tree after I got some time under my belt in the program, that I saw, alcohol ran way back in my family, and it just transformed into different addictions over generations. So my, workaholism, overeating, spending a lot. And for me, it just transferred in that I love power and control over other people because inside I feel so powerless and I don't have control over anything. And it just made me like reach out for anybody to give me my validation and self-worth. And that is like, it's the worst place to be all the time, reaching out. I say it's raping other people for their energy. That's what I call it. Like I would walk out into the world and be like, fill me, make me feel good, give me my worth, fix me. And it's like, nobody's job is to fix me. That's an inside job. No human is capable of giving me everything I need. That's why I have to turn it over to my higher power, God, whatever you want to call it.
How do you decipher from these two, from like narcissism and like, I mean, is that a component of this, or like, I mean, because that ego, that power trip, right? Like, are they different? I mean, I don't know if that ties in. I don't know. I'm so uneducated on this. That's why I'm so fascinated by it.
No, I think those narcissistic tendencies definitely play into being a sex and love addict, because you don't have empathy or compassion for someone else, and you're usually playing a role. So you're not really caring how it affects the other person. Just like an addict walks around drinking, doesn't really think about their family. They're just thinking about their high. So I definitely think ego, all those character defects that we look at come into play, jealousy, envy, narcissism, egotism, perfectionist, all that goes into play with sex and love addiction. I mean,
so let me ask you this.
That's how it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you abused as a kid?
When I went back and I did intense 8 years of therapy twice a week, plus, working my program with my mentor, I saw that I had trauma. I had a molestation when I was 5 years old that I didn't remember, and I still blacked it out. But you can be a sex and love addict and still have no trauma or sexual assault in your background. But majority, I will say, do have some sort of inappropriateness in their youth. I mean, 1 out of 3 women have been sexually assaulted and 1 out of 6 men have been sexually assaulted. And I have to tell you, on my side, a lot of the people that I know, a lot of men have. I didn't realize that a lot of my fellows and people I know have been sexually assaulted as males.
Well, and then when I heard you talking about the magazines, that's the covert abuse. The different things that you were exposed to, the Romeo and Juliet. And because in my own childhood, at 8, I was exposed to A Clockwork Orange. where they're raping.
Ooh.
I mean, and I was 8 and, but then, and I found the magazines younger than that and the kind of communication that was happening around me, and those kinds of things that were acceptable. But of course, this is about you, but you're just hitting so many targets, and it's so true. I have personally not met one sex or love addict that has not been abused. So if there are out there, and I believe that that's possible, because I think anything's possible, but I have never once met one, not once.
I have. I've had and that came from healthier backgrounds, but I think, what we encounter ourselves, and if addiction runs in our lives, you might as well just open yourself up. But I do, looking back now, I would never allow my 3-year-old son to watch Romeo and Juliet. So I think they looked at it as, my children are cultured, but do I think it's abusive? Of course, I shouldn't have watched that at such a young age. I shouldn't have found those porn magazines. But that's just my story. That's
well, I think this is such a important topic, though. I think there's so many people that experience this but don't know how to express or talk about this. I mean, even growing up, from when I was young, I remember how many of my friends that have now things are starting to line up. There's so many people that I know that have struggled understanding what they went through as kids with like porn and just different things that were around them that you didn't really see as, like, I guess growing up wasn't that big of an issue, maybe. I don't know. But like now you can see how it can really, really impact somebody.
No, it damages a young kid's mind. And that's one of the main reasons I spoke out. When we hear about sex addicts, we think about one type of person. The man that cheated on his wife, that got caught, and now he's in sex rehab, right? That's all we hear about. And it got to a point when I got a decade that I saw all these younger people struggling, 19 and 20-year-olds, because of the porn that's accessible.
Yeah.
What people aren't showing, what healthy relationships. They're having trouble finding intimacy and connection in this world we created with social media and the bigger, shinier, better. And porn really, they said it's an epidemic. They just came out
for sure.
that we're going to see this next generation. It's an epidemic of how bad it changes your chemicals in your brain and desensitizes you sexually. And that's why I spoke out. One of the main reasons is because I saw these young kids that are having trouble connecting. Just on a friend basis, they're having trouble.
Well, but the biggest thing that we're up against too, and working in the addiction space, is also kids. Whether it's from, and again, I want to keep on the topic of sex addiction, but love addiction, but it's also with the video games. They're going into this reality that is more appealing, being in the games or in the porn or in what I'm hearing you say in this, versus so when they come back, they cannot be present. It's like they're almost stuck in that. They're almost stuck in another world.
They're oversensitized. They're overstimuli. So now that when they are in reality and they're bored, they don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to handle real emotions because they are so used to the intensity, the intensity. As addicts, we want intensity. I want to be jolted. I want to feel, I want to feel euphoria 24/7. And kids these days, their brains are getting rewired.
And that's so true. But the hope, there is hope though, because we can also because since of the plasticity of the brain, we can rewire it because of the way we can change all of that. But I want to go back to the abuse part. I do want to clarify, because I went to sex abuse treatment at 6 years. And I remember being in the room with those men. Not all of them were sexually abused. So I wanted to clarify that. But they were either raged out by their mom who was drinking, who treated them awfully, or their dad had abandoned the family or was abusive. And so they were and that was the first time, because I hated an entire gender for a long time. And that's how I acted out. Because, I felt like I had been objectified by this opposite gender. And then I objectified them, that power and control you talked about.
Yeah.
But hearing them talk about the pain and the kind of men they wanted to be, and seeing those little boys come out in their writings, because I'm like, why do you have me in a room with these men? And that changed everything, because then I could see that we were all hurt little children. And I have to commend you.
Of each other. Yeah.
Exactly. And I have to commend you so much for using your experience, your platform, for bringing this to light, because I'm just so happy that you're doing this, because people we always talk about with Red Songbird Foundation how we are trying to heal this world one person, one family at a time, so that we can see each other for who we are and raise each other up and have this higher consciousness on the planet so that we are growing constantly and loving each other better. And it is that objectification of ourselves and of others that we do that just blocks us off.
Where did this end up taking you? So this is a two-part question. Did you end up having cross addictions? Did you struggle with substances and other things through this? Or was that something that was different, but also where did this end up leading you after the experience all those things as a child? Where did this end up taking you into your young adult life?
Well, first of all, no, this is my one and only addiction. I never was in the chemical substance, because I didn't like feeling out of control. So my whole thing is about power and control. So for me, it really amplified the first time that I cheated on someone. And I remember it very specifically. I was in 8th grade and I had a boyfriend, and I was always boy crazy, always like obsessed with boys. And I was at a party and I was going to get my jacket, and his friend followed me in the closet and he kissed me. And I kid you not, you guys, it was like heroin was shot up my arm. My entire body was on fire. And in that moment, I was like, oh my God, that is the best high. The secret, the dirtiness, it was behind someone's back, like that someone would be willing to break up a friendship for me. And I was chasing that high ever since.
Wow.
Yeah, so I, amplified it. It's a progressive brain disease, which is different from a chemical dependency, that it gets worse and worse and it amplifies. And so what happened was I just found myself like going from relationship to relationship, sometimes overlapping them, being a liar, a cheater, and a thief, really to get everything I needed. And I would have one main partner and then be always kind of having one foot in the door, one foot out, seeing if, and then, where you're always kind of flirting and intriguing, and you just thought it was your personality. And it was like, no, you were walking around wanting everybody to give your worth. That's not your personality. So it just kept amplifying. And what happened, what my bottom was, is I finally met a person I loved as much as I could love someone at that time. Let's just be honest. And we were living together, and I've been a working actress for 20 years. So, I'm traveling all over shooting. And I was like, oh, I found this person I really like. And we've been together for, I think, 2 years at that time. And we were living together. And what happened was a mentor of mine died suddenly, like heart attack. And I found myself 2 days later on location shooting a movie, starting to intrigue and flirt again. And I was like, wait, this is what I did when I was younger. It was just I was younger. I was looking for somebody, like the perfect person or whatever. And I almost blew up my life once again. Like I almost went there, and I was about to like cheat with this person I didn't like that was rude to waiters. And I was thinking, wait a minute. There's this person at home I care about. If we weren't together, I'd want to be his friend. Like, he's a good person. And here's someone that I don't even like, that I don't even know, and I'm about to blow up it has to be me. And I was sitting in the dark hotel at like the Holiday Inn in the middle of nowhere, and looking in the mirror and going, oh my God, am I going to be doing this the rest of my life? Am I going to be doing this at 70? Am I going to be on my deathbed at 80? Never fully connected to another human being. And that to me was so tragic. And I was bawling my eyes out, and I called my friend, and she hooked me up with her therapist. And the therapist said 2 things to me, and she said, you're very interesting. You have a secret, and I don't know what it is, but you wear the mask of a high-class prostitute. That's my other client. And I was so angry, right? Like, I was like, what? Like, so pissed. I was like, first of all, lady, I've never been paid for sex, and I've never had a one-night stand. Not that there's anything wrong with being paid for sex, no judgment at all, but I was so taken aback. My ego was like,
God. Yeah. Holy cow. So, but there is a lot, like, but you talking about that, I mean, is again, there's a lot of similarities with substance abuse addiction with this. I mean,
yeah, they're the exact same.
They mirror each other. I mean, and the acting out. Yeah.
And a lot of, I speak in a lot of recovery centers, and I've had people I've worked with that has had multiple years, you know, in other substances off of them, and they lose their time because of relationships. More people lose their time and from not drinking and drugs and all that because of relationships. That is the core thing. That hits back to, so, you know, they say it's like no one wants to do this work. It's like the worst. My withdrawal was 9 months of hell. 9 months.
It's resentments and relationships are the two biggest repeat offenders for addicts and alcoholics. It's relationships and resentments.
It's so crazy. It's so crazy because I've had friends of mine. I had a friend of mine that had 5 years, and he started seeing women of the night, and he went back out. He can't, for the last 17 years, he cannot put together 60 days.
No,
he can't do it.
I have one friend that he has quit heroin, and he said, I cannot quit her. He quit heroin. He's like 30 years off of heroin, and he cannot quit her. And I have another friend that has had 9 years, and she just lost her time and went drunk driving and almost killed somebody over a random dude on Instagram. It's like insane the things we do for relationships, and no one talks about how addictive they are.
Well, and let me say this, girl, Pia Melody, who's sober from alcohol and drugs. And then she did codependency. Exactly, right? She said the love addiction was the hardest that she ever did. And from my experience, because I dated narcissists that nearly took me back out, I left that at 20 years sober. I left dating that kind. He came in after that. But I left those kind of things I grew up in. And this is so severe, and it is life-threatening.
It takes you down. More people are in jail from love and sex addiction than really other addictions. I spoke at, LA County for 2.5 years, the women's prison, and every single woman in that jail was in there because of sex and love addiction. She sold drugs for her partner. She murdered, attempted murder. This is no joke. If you watch a Dateline, just watch a Dateline and you see how many love triangles, right?
It's fascinating. It's like there's so much to learn about this. I honestly want to be able to talk to you more because I can't believe time's already up.
Oh my God, whatever. We have to do this again.
Yeah, we're going to. Well, but going back though, just to wrap this up with your stuff is, you had that moment of clarity where it's like, look, I am at a place where am I going to be on my deathbed still doing this, not to be able to have an intimate or a healthy relationship with somebody the rest of my life. So there was that turning point. What did you do from there moving forward, and how did you get onto the transition of living a life in recovery free from this?
It was brutal. Like I said, I had to surrender. I had to enter a program. I had to do the therapy. I had to literally shed the skin, which, looking at all the crap I've done, all the people I've harmed, all that stuff. And it took me a long time to get through all that stage, 9 years, until I felt like something lifted, that I now had the tools to have a healthy relationship. And here's what I want to say. I'm with the same man that I was, 11 years ago. We're still together. Awesome. It's not like thank you. We've been together for 16 years, and it's not like I got better in this addiction and found the perfect partner. I got better in this addiction and found myself. That is what it's about, man. It's not about finding a perfect partner. Listen, my husband can leave me today and I will be okay. I couldn't say that 11 years ago. Like, I had to have somebody to make me feel like I was worth something. And now I did that work. I dug really deep. I call it dig through your to get to your gold. Like, you have to dig through all that trauma, all that pain, all that, abandonment people have done, all that resentments. You have to dig through it to get to your gold again. And that's what I did. And it was brutal, but no one can take it away from me. I can now go on my deathbed and know that I'm connected to other humans. I'm of service. I have empathy. I don't have any judgment. I've either heard it or done it, like you guys know. You're like, no one can tell me anything that shocks me. But the whole thing is being of service and speaking out and saying you are not alone. If you keep going back to that bad relationship, there is a way out. If you keep cheating, there is a way out. If you're always searching for this outside person to fix you, your soulmate, which I don't believe in soulmates, you are your own soulmate. There is a way out. And that's my message is like, I've done it. And if I can help one person, like you guys said, then I've done my job.
Wow. That is so beautiful.
Damn.
So all the people listening here with their jaws on the floor, if you were to give them one action of the day, one thing, what would it be?
You know what? Go online. The first thing I would do, if anything resonates, even just a little bit, because we all have different stories. It's such a gray disease. If anything resonates, go in and type 40 questions, sex and love. And there's these 40 questions, yes or no questions. It will take you 2 minutes. It's like, have you lost count of your sexual partners? Are you always looking for someone to fix you? Have you felt like you've had to have sex? All these questions. And they say if you get 5 or more yeses, that you might have this problem, and look into getting help. Just tell one person. Something about telling one person. That's what I talk about on my podcast is like, tell one person. There's something that happens that releases it. And I also wrote a book about it, Secret Life of a Hollywood Sex and Love Addict. Read the book. If it resonates, then maybe this will help you too, because it saved my life, you guys. It saved
Do I get a copy?
my life.
Do I get a signed copy?
Yes,
I want a signed copy. He's got to ask for his own.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
That's phenomenal insight. Where can people find you, find your podcast, social media? Where are you at?
Yeah, hit me up. I answer all my DMs. It's really important to me to be transparent and of service. So if you have a question, DM me at the Brianne Davis or TikTok at the.Brianne Davis. If you want to look into the book or resources, go to secretlifenovel.com. And the book's worldwide. We just hit bestseller for the 4th time. And there's Audibles out. And, it's just get help. You don't have to keep going on this cycle. You are not alone. There's millions of us all over the world. So thank you for letting me share my story and my journey.
Oh my gosh.
You're the best. Well, I want to have you on again to kind of continue this due to the fact that it's like, there's so much stuff that's come up for me as somebody that's within addiction space of stuff. And like, I never really thought I'd ever potentially would have struggled with something like this, but you brought up so many things. I'm like, oh my God, what? Okay.
No, we can totally do a deep dive in the porn and the everything, every side of it.
But that's where I'm at though. And I think for us and our listeners is like, we have people that are in all walks and all stages of their life and recovery. There's some people that are still active. There's some people that are, are newly sober in all facets. And then there's some people that have had long-term. And I think that's where, again, is by expressing vulnerability, it creates humility. And I think being able to be raw and transparent about this type of stuff only allows us to get deeper and more connected with ourselves, which is the ultimate goal.
Exactly.
And I want to be your friend.
Yeah. Okay, let's be friends.
I want to be your friend,
Well, thank
you're
so
awesome.
much. Like what a great podcast. Blown away. We're gonna be back in touch with you.
Perfect. All right, you guys. I'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.